Thank you everyone for turning up today and listening, coming here to hear Christof and Mirko speak about about the music industry, about live content, and how that might relate to the book industry. So my name is Slang. I'm from the UK, but actually originally from Australia, and I've worked in retail borders. I've worked for publishers, and I'm now running a literature festival, which is happening about a week and a half in London. And Christof is, he's connected with City Slang, and works as a tour booking agent for many reasonably well-known band names, such as Nirvana, Flaming Lips, Soundgarden, Lemonheads. And Mirko is he's with South by Southwest, and might just take us through a little bit of it briefly, just in case, just to sort of bring you up to speed on what is actually going on there. And he's also worked for the Reed Midem organisation. Okay, so we're talking about, we've got a few questions to ask today. I might just, I think what we'll do is we'll speak for a few minutes each, just on the topic at hand, and then we'll go through a few questions, and then we'll open it up to all of our audience here. So do you want to start off, Mirko?
Hi everyone. I was going to do some kind of PowerPoint thing, but there's no computer, so we won't do that. South by Southwest, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of it. Are you familiar with it? Okay, well, that's good. It's actually 3 festivals which take place in 10 days. We call it South by Southwest Week. It's the music festival, which most people know, which has been going for 25 years. And there's a film festival and an interactive festival, which have both been going for 17 years. I guess altogether we have about 30,000 people come along. It was born out of the ethos of independent music business, and that became independent film, and it's basically become a kind of creative meeting place for people who have different ideas. I guess to try and relate it to the book festival, we have at each of our 3 festivals a Barnes & Noble place where people come and do book signings, you know, musicians, producers, directors, whatever, and that works generally quite well. I think in the context of events and selling books, well, we were just sitting down a few minutes ago, and Christof pointed out that people in the music business have been doing these kind of linked up presentations over satellite since a number of years already. I tend to be a bit of a cynic about a lot of what I read in the press about the music business, film business. I think there's a lot of garbage talked. One thing I can recommend, if you go onto our website and you want some quick information every day, we have for each of those festivals a daily live news feed which takes the best stories from Reuters, AP, Variety and so on. It's called Daily Chord for the music. I can't remember what the one for film is called, but they're all up on our website. It's a free service. You just sign up and you'll get every day the best sort of stories coming out. I'll give you some examples of what I say when I'm rather sort of cynical about things. There's a report came out which said that paid digital music users worldwide to double by 2014, and that, you know, the revenue is going to go from 832 to $1.5 billion. Well, the same day there was an article by Nielsen which said digital music sales flat this year. So I think that that's a point where you've got to take everything with a certain pinch of salt. Also last week there was the report from Live Nation, who you may know as the world's biggest concert promotion and ticketing agency. Their concert revenues fell by 7% in the second quarter. They made a loss of $34.6 million. So I think one has to sort of take it all this sort of, you know, events are going to rescue everything with a pinch of salt. So I'm sure Christof will know far better than I do that in the independent music business, yes, a lot of bands really do make their money by touring. But I think it all has to be put into perspective. Maybe I'll pass on the microphone.
Thank you, Mirko. Christof.
All right. I've run a label called City Slang for the last 20 years. I had a booking agency before that for a couple of years, which you pointed out. The label is it's a boutique sort of niche operation where we sort of try to release music that we love and adore, and we think that people should hear, and so it's a bit of a missionary thing. I think there's a lot of book publishers who do exactly that. They release books by authors that they like and that they want to push, and so, you know, there's a lot of similarities in that. And this whole hearsay, or what you hear, this line about the events industry taking over and saving the music industry, I don't buy it, because it is the next, actually I think it's going to be the next thing that is going to be implode. What's happened in the music industry, and it's probably the same thing in the book industry in the last 10 years, is that there has been an explosion of content. There's so much more music out there right now, and it's not so much that people aren't willing to buy music or to invest in music or to pay for music. It's more like there is way too much music for all involved. And South by, case in point, you know, over what, 3 days there's 2,000 bands playing there. Come on. So that's a marketplace for agents nowadays. It used to be that record companies went there to try and find bands that they would sign. Now it's completely turned around, and there's a whole pack of agents chasing the buzz and trying to find the next, and signing up bands, not so much because they think this band is great, but they sign them up so that somebody else doesn't get them. And you don't have to be a cynic to state these kinds of developments and see them and witness them and be sort of concerned about them. The music industry, or the music business as such, has made has gone through a fundamental change in the last 10 years, from being a scarcity, where music was actually something that you had to go into a store and put money down, and then you could take it home, and then you could listen to it. And today it's completely overwhelming, and it's the opposite. You can actually listen to anything and everything on the internet for free, basically. And then it's almost like giving somebody, what's the word, yes, exactly, that's the word I was looking for. The music industry is very much based on that right now. And the big live promoters have become the new majors. I think the major labels have lost the control over many aspects of their artists' careers, and you know, the Madonnas and Red Hot Chili Peppers are all signing major contracts now with Live Nation and corporations like that, rather than with record companies. And the record is almost an afterthought these days in the career of bigger bands like that. What's happening at the ground level is that there's all these little bands don't sell records anymore, so they're constantly on the road. So the traffic that goes through even a big market like, say, New York or Los Angeles or Berlin or London has gotten so big that now on the small level, the little show, and like I just literally just got back from San Francisco, where I've been doing a week around the US, and there's one tour by a band called Arcade Fire that's doing fabulously well right now, and all the other sort of indie rock tours are not reaching their capacity levels in sales. So all these bands come and they play in clubs of maybe 1,000 or 1,500 capacities, and they're filling them up maybe 2/3. And that's the first sign of that's the next business that's actually going to take a big dive, and it's going to suffer. But it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, John.
Okay, so I mean, what we're talking about when the venues aren't filling up or reaching capacities is bands that haven't kind of broken through. Is that, you know?
No, this is bands that have made big steps forward, maybe on a record before this one, and now they've made a new record, but they're not new anymore. The hype is gone. The cult is the music industry on that level is also, you know, the blogosphere. All of these people are. There's a cult of the young, a cult of the new. So if you make your first record, you get written up like there's no tomorrow on the blogs and on the magazines and websites. And if you come back with your second record, you're almost old news nowadays. So you know, your direct fan interaction is so much more important nowadays than to be relying on the media to give you the thumbs up or down, because they'll just move on. They move on, and then you're there on your second record and you notice, wow, the room I filled up last time isn't filling up, because there's so many other choices. I think that's what we see.
So, I mean, so on that point of bands connecting with fans, I mean, in the example with Arcade Fire, you know, they're producing, you know, most, you know, I'm sure fans would argue is what some of their best content these days. So, do you think it's a case of just music audiences just becoming more kind of wiser, or more kind of, you know, selective about, or do you think it's because there's literally so much going on that they have to kind of they have to find bands that rise above all of that. So where does you know, one of those connections with fans would be social networking, I guess. Would you say that would be one thing that is a factor, or do you think, or what's the answer to try and get above the noise for bands, do you think?
Be outstanding, like, you know, in the case in point, Arcade Fire is one of the is a band that when you go to a concert and you see 8,000 people in San Francisco or 4,000 people in Berlin, they leave the venue, they're all sort of elevated a few inches above the ground because they've just seen a band that sort of explodes on stage and really gives their audience something that they take home and go, oh my god, that was one of those. So that, you know, that's a special band, but I don't know what the answer is. I mean, you have to make good, outstanding, original music. I mean, it's not different in this business, in the book business, right? Your book better be good. If you write an average book, what's the point? So what I tell my artists now is that you know, a good record doesn't cut it. You have to make an amazing record. Go back. Go back into the studio.
I mean, I would say that, you know, in the case of books, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people that would say that you don't have to write a good book for it to sell well, because if you like the celebrity books, for example, they run off the back of, you know, a publicity machine that you were referring to. You know, they get the headlines and all that kind of thing, which, you know, I guess there's sort of some parallel with certain acts in music. I'm sure that would be the case as well. You know, X Factor, for example.
Yeah, all the platforms.
You know, the platforms such as that. I was just going to go back to this question about events kind of potentially imploding, and how that bodes for things like South by Southwest. And is there a kind of account? You know, is this something that's you know, that organisers are kind of anticipating, and you know, how do we deal with this kind of saturation? How do they handle that kind of area?
Okay, there's one thing that's just, quite important to know about South by Southwest. It's an event that takes place one time during the year, but in all honesty, it's an event which actually happens 365 days a year, because we were one of the first companies out there who really got involved in social media networking. Twitter, for example, was more or less launched at South by Southwest about 3 years ago. One of the things that staff members in the company have to do now is write a couple of blog stories every month, which I detest, but the thing is, you know, we have, if you look on our website, which is very easy, xxsw.com, you will see we have a news feed on various things written by staff members and contributors, so that every day when people go onto our website, they'll read something new. I wrote something about the Frankfurt Buchmesse a couple of weeks ago. Now, the thing, what Chris said about this culture of the new, I think is a very important thing. I think you can sell a lot of